Hey, it's Eric G. Around the House is sponsored by Baldwin Hardware. For 75 years, Baldwin Hardware has been known for its first-class quality and craftsmanship in door and cabinetry hardware. As an alumnus of the Baldwin Hardware Design Council, I can say I have seen the details and quality from design to the finished product. If you're looking for a new style and old-world craftsmanship, I can tell you there is only one Baldwin Hardware. Check out what would look great in your home at baldwinhardware.com.
It's Around the House.
Today's episode is brought to you by Root Quencher and rootquencher.com. If you want to save those trees and save water at the same time, visit rootquencher.com and put the water right at the roots. Today's episode is an encore presentation from last October about exterior tile that you don't want to miss. We wanted to replay this one because we've had so many people asking about it, and this is a great conversation with William White on how to tile outside.
Ardex, the company that I worked for, Ardex Tile and Stone, actually developed some exterior drainage systems. Now, this is really unique because we are actually able to do tile on exterior decks. And that's where most people have shied away from because decks move, wood structures move.
When it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is a lot to know, but we've got you covered. This is Around the House.
Welcome to the Around the House show. This is where we talk everything about your home every single week. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a special guest in the studio, William White from Ardex, man. Welcome back to Around the House.
Thank you, Eric.
Good times, brother, having you back on. And this is
been a minute.
This could be a good time. I wanted to talk about something that we haven't actually ever tackled on Around the House. And being that I've been on the show for coming up on, 8-9 years now, that's not a lot of topics. So this is a fresh one.
All right.
What I think is cool about this is that we have not ever talked about exterior tile because we dive into the inside stuff, but we're seeing more and more exterior tile out there. And it is something that, much like a bathroom, you really have to plan this out for it to work correctly.
I agree 100%. And I would add to that, with COVID, some of the things, the outcome of COVID was people weren't going on vacations. Suddenly they did have, money that they'd maybe slotted away for vacation, but you couldn't go. They were stuck in their houses. And all of a sudden you saw this surge in the DIY. I'm stuck at home. I'm finally going to start tackling some of those projects that I've put off forever. And one of those outcomes was investing into that outdoor space, that outdoor entertaining. Mm-hmm. There's the barbecue. Yeah, you might mount a TV outside. Yeah, you might, do this, do that, add some lights. And then tile really finishes off that space.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, tile exterior is one of the most difficult installations because there's a lot of factors that you have to think about.
It's funny. I just saw today on a social media site, I'm in a bunch of different home improvement groups, and there was a contractor in there trying to advertise his wares in the Colorado market down there. And this guy's like, hey, I do perfect tile work. This is great. I look at the picture. He's got Home Depot concrete board up on the wall. He has that blue foundation waterproofing on the joints.
Only on the
joints.
Okay. And on the seams of the backer board.
Yep, seams of the backer board. That's it. And I can only see the mastic because it's half installed. You can tell he's in the middle of it. I can't see the mastic above the one tile. So you know that is he dabbing the back? What's he? And I'm like, okay, this is some professional, and I'm going to use big air quotes for professional.
Exactly.
That is out there selling his wares going, I do perfect tile. And I'm looking at this thing going, man, you got a tiled bench. You have all these places. They're going to be water intrusion problems. And you, buddy, aren't even getting the shower right.
Yeah. Showers can be tricky, and some of those same general practices of doing tile in a shower, which a lot of contractors, whether you're a general contractor or remodeler, as well as homeowners, have tackled, a shower. Yeah. And as long as you follow the process and do everything involved, especially waterproofing, most of the time there can be a fair amount of success there.
Yeah.
As we transition to outside, there's kind of two different applications, right? You've got horizontal and vertical. So depending on if you're maybe tiling maybe around the barbecue or something like that.
Sure.
That's one place that, it's a little easier. But as soon as you start going horizontal, and now you're having to deal with rain, sun, expansion, contraction, waterproofing, all these things come into play. That's where it starts to get a little tricky.
And even more so if you're on a floor that has any kind of flex on it as well.
Movement. Yeah.
Any kind of movement.
Deflection.
And, people don't many times design that outside deck to not move like the surface inside your home is, for instance. So
exactly. And there are approved ways to install tile on wood interior.
Yep.
The only approved way per the TCNA handbook, Tile Council of North America, the only approved way per that handbook to install tile exterior is a floating mud bed. So you're talking 2.5 inches of mud, waterproofing on top of that, waterproofing below it, tile on top of that. You're talking about a massive amount of material, some incredible skills to be able to pull that off and make it flat and have proper pitch. And just the amount of weight that adds to a structure. So that's technically the only approved method. Now, interesting, Ardex does have some options that get away from that mud bed and can do some things. But that's where you're getting a little more advanced. I think the place where most people start is maybe like a front porch or an entryway or something like that. That's where a lot of people will start dabbling and taking a stab at doing some tile. Yeah. And, you're typically direct to concrete. Most front porches are concrete, generally speaking.
Yeah. If you're going to tile it, yes. Otherwise it's just a wood, right. It's just a wood porch or something like that. But yeah, I agree.
And a lot of times that entryway is fully covered or semi-covered. So you're not talking about necessarily a lot of direct exposure. And in that situation, as long as you get really good coverage. And when I talk about coverage, what I'm saying is the amount of mortar when you've combed it out on the substrate and set a tile down. You have to pick that tile back up and look at the bottom side of it. And you want to see 95% coverage. Let me tell you, that's a minimum, is 95% coverage for exterior tile. That means really, really good. So where I see a lot of people make mistakes in that instance is that they're using a $10 bag of mud that they go down to the box store and buy.
And you're leaning on that way too heavy.
And you're relying on a $10 bag of mud to do something really special, and it just doesn't have the ability. And that's where stepping up and buying a really premium product is going to help out a lot. And also understanding, asking some questions. I'm going to be using this application exterior. What's the best product? And, depending on where you live, that may play a factor too. Are we talking about sunny Southern California, or are we talking about, as you mentioned, Colorado, where you're 100 in the summer, but you're negative whatever in the winter? You've got these
I've seen 50-degree swings in Colorado in an afternoon. So and that's crazy, but that's what happens. And what's ironic is people go traditionally, they pick out the tile because they go, oh, that's pretty. How do I install it? But they even forget about, okay, what happens when this tile gets wet? Maybe it's damp. Maybe you're in a beach area and it gets sand on it. You got to think about what's going to be on the surface of that. So you pick the right tile before we even get into setting it.
True. And understanding slip coefficient. So some tiles are rated to be in wet environments, because they're going to help to eliminate that slipping and falling hazard, which, heaven forbid, you've got the grandparents coming over to visit and one of them takes a dive on the front porch before they even hit the house. Like that kind of ruins the day for everybody.
Maybe that's how you get rid of the door-to-door salesman out there, is you put the polished Carrara marble and a little bit of a sprinkler out there that you turn on as you see him heading up the driveway. And then I'll talk to you if you can make it to the door.
It's true. It's true. But, think about those things and is a tile exterior rated? Is it freeze thaw rated? You mentioned Carrera.
If you're not taking notes, don't worry. You can always catch the podcast on any podcast player. Around the House will be right back after these important messages. Don't go anywhere.
What's up? This is Stick
and Satchel from Steel Panther, and you are listening to
Around the House with Eric G.
Yeah.
We love Eric G, and you should too.
Welcome back to the Around the House show. If you want to get a hold of me, it's really easy. Head over to aroundthehouseonline.com and you can catch me over there. Just a contact us page, and that lands in my inbox, and I'm there to help. Now let's get back to our conversation with William White. We're talking everything about doing tile outdoors for your outdoor kitchen, patio, or front steps.
You mentioned Carrera. Me personally, I would really question somebody putting natural stone outside, especially with the porcelain tile that we have nowadays. When I can be fooled by some of the products that are manufactured in porcelain, and I have to walk up and touch them to see, is that really a stone or is it not? They've gotten so good that honestly, why would you want to put something outside? I see people put slate outside all the time, and I'm like, no, that is like the worst material to put outside, in my personal opinion.
Nasty. Yes. It's just so hard to take care of.
Get a little water underneath of it, and those layers start shaling off. Yep. It's also so porous that water absorbs right straight through it, gets underneath of it, soaks the mortar, and then what happens when water expands? Or when it freezes, it expands, and you start popping tiles. It's just...
Yeah. Why would you want to lean that hard on your waterproofing anyway and sit out there and on your ceiling and go, okay, I sealed this a year ago. By the time you realize that you should have sealed it, you're putting another one in there, and it's got a lifetime warranty seal. No, it doesn't. You just wore the top of that soft thing off. There's only so far that's going to go.
Exactly. That's one of the big mistakes I see people make, is selecting the wrong material. That plays a huge part in it. And sometimes that's where stepping up to a dedicated tile distributor is going to be able to provide you with a little better guidance than, say, like the box store. Yeah. Because they may not be experienced enough to be able to answer those questions specific to an exterior application. That's where going to, a design center or something like that, where they specialize in flooring. Typically, those people can steer you the right direction. They can say, okay, well, stay away from here. These aren't the right ones. You want to be looking at these. Well, that can be helpful.
Well, and on top of it, the box store doesn't have too many products in that building that are even rated for what you want to do.
It's hard to say with all the different, across the nation. Who knows? Maybe there is one that has it, but from what I see around,
but I'm just saying it's a tough find. It's a big ask.
From what I find around here, you're correct. No, they don't have the education, and they also don't have the products.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we'll go back to that front porch as an example. If you're sitting there on that front porch, you got the tile picked out. Okay, this isn't going to, grandma's not going to break an arm or get a head injury with this. Okay. So this is safe. And I've got this, kind of, maybe it's an old 50-year-old concrete or 100-year-old concrete front step that you want to put tile over. I know so many people get out there with the broom, they brush it off, they mix up the mortar, and off they go. There's a little more to that sometimes on the prep work than what you might think.
I'm going to say it starts a day before that. I want to go out there with a pressure washer the day before I'm going to start my installation. I'm going to pressure wash 50 years, 100 years of grime and moss and whatever else out. Blast that off the surface. Also, that's going to blow off any latency, any flaking concrete, anything like that.
Chalkiness.
Chalkiness. It'll show me if there's any places I need to make some repairs, possibly beforehand, because there are products that can go in and patch that.
Sure.
And then you got to let it dry. So maybe it's a couple days before. Who knows? Maybe it's the weekend before, and you do all your pressure washing, get things nice and clean. That way, when you start the project the next Saturday, all you have to do is sweep.
Yeah, there you go. Now, I know I've dealt with repairing foundations, and when I would put, like a high strength mortar mix in there to patch that, we'd always wet that down beforehand so it wouldn't pull the moisture out. How do you deal with that when it comes to tile? Because I know this is a whole different subject we're talking about versus putting on a high strength concrete versus, some kind of mortar that you're dealing with.
Actually, you'd be surprised that giving that surface just a damp sponge. We don't want standing water. Yep. We actually call it SSD, surface saturate dry. So we want to rub the surface a little bit with some water, but we don't want any puddling. So we do want it to be dry when we apply our mortar. So that's never a bad idea because, like you said, the thirsty concrete or foundation wants to rob that mortar, the water from the mortar, and it'll make it dry and difficult to work with. So if you can, help that out and, give the concrete a drink first, splash some water on there, just make sure you don't have puddling. That's a great way to start.
There you go. There you go. So, of course, you're going to sit there and start laying tile after you get all that prep work. You've got things taken a look at. You, of course, got to check out to make sure that porch is sloping the right way.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Just to make sure that it's not tipping back towards the house. So you've got, all of a sudden you're creating a swimming pool up there versus a front porch. Make sure that's all going the right way.
And I guess you're right, because you can't really assume, right? We all know what our fathers taught us about assume. So,
my dad, so you're right.
So throwing a level on there and just making sure that maybe things haven't settled. Maybe it did have pitch and now it's dead flat. Well, dead flat isn't going to be good. We're going to have to add some slope back in there. And there are products that are designed for exterior use that can create that sloping, because you're right. You do want water going away from the structure, away from the house. And that's how we keep, things dry and keep rot away. Just shed that water off.
And for our listeners, so you understand that concrete, especially when you have that big front porch stoop out there, you're putting thousands of pounds out there. And guess what? That foundation in many cases was dug out. So did they,
and backfilled,
And so out where the end of the steps are, that's virgin earth. That doesn't have a lot of place to compact. But the stuff up against the foundation, maybe they didn't get in there and compact that correctly. So that's why that tends to lean back towards the house. And now's the time to fix it if you need to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then, so once we get into that, really we start getting into starting to lay tile.
Yeah. Then it is time to start laying tile.
So when it comes down to it, you got to sit there and lay your tile out first, figure out where you're going to start and stop before you even start ripping that bag open.
Yeah. Layout is king, right? So we always, when we're looking at tile installations, we want centered and balanced. That's kind of the guiding principle to tile is centered and balanced. And when we lay out, we want to have our cuts so that we typically have more than half of a tile if we have to make a cut. So that's the general rule of layout is centered and balanced. And if there are cuts, that they're over half of a tile. Now, if you have like some funny L shape or something like that, and you have a couple little slivers here or there, that's okay because you're not going to hit everything all the time. But just as guiding principles, centered and balanced, and then your cuts, any cuts that you have are larger than half of the tile.
Now that's great advice around the house. We'll be right back after these very important messages. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, this is Ron Keel, the Metal Cowboy from Keel, the Ron Keel Band and Steeler. We are rocking Around the House with Eric G.
Raise your fist, make your stand.
Welcome back to the Around the House show. If you want to find out more information about us, head over to aroundthehouseonline.com. Now let's get back to our conversation about exterior tile with William White. little itty bitty on the edge. And if you've got a step maybe that's got a couple different stairs, you don't want that little itty bitty on the edge because you're going to roll that thing right off of there. There's only so much you can do. So you want to make sure you got enough material to hold that on there.
Yep. And then once you've got your layout established, I personally like to use a straight edge, or I'll even put my level down and then put a couple boxes of tile on that. And I use that as a straight edge. And then I'll actually set my tile up against that nice straight level or L screed or whatever I'm using. And that just makes sure that everything stays nice and straight on that course right in front of the front door.
There's nothing worse than coming up and going, wow, that's hooking to the left by 3/8 of an inch. And man, it's going to look worse than what you started. Yeah. Because it's just going to mess with everybody walking up to the front door.
And that's why I like to use a straight edge as opposed to just maybe snapping a chalk line and trying to stack off of a chalk line. I like to use that straight edge. A lot of times if I don't have a straight edge, like I said, I just throw my level down there, put a couple boxes of tile on it, holds it nice and in place, and then I tile on the other side.
Good.
Yep.
Yeah, then you're good. Okay, so now that we've got layout figured out, we're going to start laying some tiles down. Of course, I've learned well, I'm going to throw the Ardex down, but really what are you starting to look out there as far as the right material for an exterior application?
So there are some specifics when it comes to exterior rated mortars. If you look on the bags of mortar, look for something that says it's an ANSI 118.15. A 11815 mortar means that it's a high performance polymer modified cement based mortar. With it being that high performance, it goes through some rigorous testing that says that it will survive in an exterior application. Now, like I said earlier, that's not a $10 bag of mortar. You're going to have to jump up considerably in price. But think about it. This is your investment. You're wanting to do tile outside. You have to pay the price.
Exactly. So you go through, get all your tiles set. You got the mortar mixed up right. You're set. You're good to go. Now the world of grout comes into this, and exterior, you're asking a lot out of a grout.
So
what are your recommendations?
Yeah, there's actually one step that comes before that though. Before the grouting, and this is going to sound odd to you, I know, but before grouting is all of our expansion joints. So because the tile is just a covering over top let's use this concrete as an example. You've got a concrete block poured in place. It's 2 feet thick or whatever it is by, 10 feet long. That's a solid monolithic mass of concrete. It is dimensionally stable. It doesn't move very much. The tile, I picked some pretty black porcelain to put out there, or the wife did. Now that tile covering is going to expand and contract at a different rate than the substrate below it. So to counter that, we have to put in what are called expansion joints. And expansion joints are simply just a silicone caulking joint completely around the perimeter, because we don't want the tile, we want the tile to be able to have the ability to move, as well as occasionally we may have to put them in the field. So there are standards out there that tell us how often those have to be. Typically, it's not to exceed like 8 to 10 feet in either direction for exterior tile. And so what I like to do personally is I like to take care of all of my expansion joints before I grout. And that's because once I get going grouting, sometimes I forget about those expansion joints. I get grout down in there, then I'm trying to dig the grout back out. So if I just think about that beforehand, do it the day that I, set that last piece of tile, then when I go to do my grouting, I'm also not getting dirty grout water into those joints, which would then be a bond breaker for the silicone.
Yep. That makes sense. And that way you don't forget, you still go through and brainlessly keep grouting, right? That's what all of us do.
I've done it. I've learned.
Oh yeah, same. You're
in grout mode because I want to get done.
Yeah. I mean, you're wrapping it up. The mental math there is I got to get this box checked and let's get it done and get it done right. So that ends up having you get it in there cleaned up. You got a really nice product there. The grout, though, what are you going to use for a grout? Because I know I don't want people going in and buying that $12 box from the home center and expecting it to perform for them.
Again, just like we were talking about with the mortars, there are the inexpensive mortars that you can buy at a box store or buy anywhere. I mean, you can even go to a tile distributor and buy a $10 bag. Sure. Well, the same thing goes for grout. Anytime you're doing exterior, you're going to have to step up and get better products. And that goes for the grout as well. So typically I'm looking for, again, back to use these ANSI standards, a 118.7. Yep. That means it's been industry tested to be a high performance cement-based grout. What that does is, again, they've tested it against porosity, freeze thaw stability. So, and as an added bonus out of that, a lot of times you can actually pick up some stain resistance as well, which is never a bad thing to have in your grout as well.
Especially on an exterior application where it's going to get beat from everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So look for.
So I know people.
Go ahead.
I know people like to jump in and go, "Oh, I'm going to go epoxy or something like that." And that is that something that they should think about doing outside? I know there's going to be pluses and minuses to that.
Typically epoxies outside. I'm not necessarily a fan of exterior epoxy. Yeah. It's a little overkill. Is it truly necessary? I use epoxy when I want the maximum in stain and chemical resistance. Now, is that what I'm really facing on my front porch? Not really.
No.
So, epoxy grouts require a little more attention to detail, maybe some more experience. This isn't going to be your first time taking a stab at epoxy grout on your front porch. So
exactly,
I really do think that these high performance cement based grouts are honestly over time going to hold up much, much better than epoxy grouts in that type application.
I always worried about epoxy and UV. Am I going to get a color change out of that with UV? If I've got a lighter grout, is that going to yellow with time? You just don't know sometimes with some of those products that anytime you use something that's got any kind of composite in it out there, UV can be your enemy someday.
Absolutely. And, there can be yellowing that can occur. Now, does that typically break down the epoxy? No, it's typically just an aesthetic thing. But again, why go through all the effort and then, 2 years down the road, have it turn yellow on you? I wouldn't be very happy. And that's why I typically tend to steer away from those kind of products.
Makes sense. All right. So let's go to another part of the house. Let's say we're going to do that big back patio that's going to the pool.
Okay.
And I have seen some new systems out there. Maybe you're using the larger format tiles. Maybe you're using even the bigger porcelain format tiles. I have seen some cool pedestal systems and stuff out there that seem really cool, but I haven't ever used them before. Okay. So it's something that I look at and go, hey, that's sexy cool. I don't know. I haven't played with it yet. So you know what I mean?
They look sexy cool. Are they really?
Yeah.
So with pedestals, so these are plastic pedestals that typically are adjustable in height in some way or fashion. And you'll have 4 tiles share one pedestal. So the corner of the tile just sits on there of each of 4 tiles. And they can be, there's a time and place for them. I wouldn't say that it's all the time and every place. Where I see pedestals being very, very successful are rooftop decks, where you've already got existing air conditioning lines, things like that are running across the roof. And so if you elevate up off that roof deck, you can still have all those electrical and refrigerant lines running across there, and your tile is suspended above it. Also, a lot of times on rooftop decks, they're pitched in such a manner that you don't want to follow that pitch in the substrate. You want to have a flat deck. So
don't go anywhere. Around the House will be right back.
All right. The band is drunk. It's the end of the show. Now drinking down.
Welcome back to the Around the House show. Now let's get back to our conversation with William White from Ardex as we finish up talking about exterior tile.
No, you actually want an angular surface to that aggregate, and that helps the Portland cement actually get a bite to the edges of it and hold it all together.
So don't use river rock in your concrete.
No. Fence post holes, fine. Foundation, no.
Well, that's fascinating, man. And, it's one of those things that I think that tile outside is beautiful, and maybe it's not where you put the Saltillo tile out there, but at least in our
Depending
climate.
on where
of course,
you live,
there's climates out there that you can do.
Yeah, if you're in Arizona, there's nothing wrong with doing Saltillo tile outside, right?
If you're in our area, ain't gonna work, folks.
Yep.
Ain't gonna work.
Yeah. If you're above the frost line, that's a no-go.
So cool. And I've seen so many exterior tile applications before we head out here. I love what we're starting to see on wall surfaces now, exterior, as far as using large format pieces of tile and some of the decorative stuff outside. It's really coming back style-wise.
Well, and what I like about it is that on some high-rises now, they're doing these gauged porcelain panels, which a single piece of tile can be 5 foot by 10 foot. The cool thing about these giant porcelain tiles is the way that they're making them, that they're literally graffiti proof. You can spray paint on them and it'll
pressure washer ain't gonna hurt it.
Pressure wash right off. And it's like, because I know everyone deals with graffiti, especially in downtown type situations, and having some of these products that are just aesthetically beautiful, because like I said, they're getting porcelains to the point now where I have to walk up and touch it to know if it's real or not.
It could be steel, it could be wood, it could be anything.
And they've got these patterns that repeat, it'll take, a gauged porcelain, and by the way, they flip it and turn it and flip it and turn it, and the several different series. I mean, you may be able to get 8 tiles away before you have a repeat in a tile. And if these tiles are 10 feet long, you're talking 60 feet away. You're not going to see that repeat in a pattern. Yeah. I mean, just where they're going with some of this tile cladding is just amazing to see. It is.
Yeah, it's super cool. So I saw here at my old radio station, they were redoing the lobby. Mm-hmm. And so they were doing I think they were like 5x9 panels on the floor.
Okay.
Which I was watching them set it and I was going, oh man. Because I was walking up the elevators, getting in and looking at that and going, uh-oh. I walked by it the next day when they'd opened that up, and I could feel every lip on about 4 of the panels.
Oh, yeah. See, and now this is where we're definitely out of.
And they had to bust those things up.
Yep. This is where we've definitely left the DIY zone when you're talking about tiles that are 5 foot by 10 foot. This is where even professionals. Yeah. I mean, I was at a 5-day training last week where all they were dealing with was these gauged porcelain tiles, these 5 foot by 10 foot. And now the manufacturers are even pushing to get bigger than 10 foot. I mean, it's going to, the largest tile now is 164 inches in length. So we've definitely,
that slab countertop material larger than the XL slabs.
We've definitely left the DIY zone, but some of the advantages are just so amazing, and contractors are now starting to buy in. I mean, like I said, I was at a 5-day training last week where there were contractors coming from all around the country to attend this training to learn how to work with and fabricate and move and install these really ginormous tiles.
But like you said, though, there's nothing more durable than that, and that's application if it's set
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely.
It's just going to be super durable. You don't have grout lines, and it's just one of those things that works. These here, they had to go in and bust a couple panels out, and I was just like, I came by, I caught it with my shoe, and I went, "Oh, that's ugly.
Not going to work." And with
even on a commercial job,
and with this gauge porcelain, it also lends itself to showers and bathroom applications residentially just as well. Because think about if you could have your shower wall in one piece of porcelain for the entire back wall. One for the side wall, one for the other side wall. I mean,
kind of like my house, right?
Kind of like your house. I mean, it suddenly it takes maintenance down to nothing. And that's where using gauge porcelain on the walls, epoxy grout on your floor with a mosaic, and now you've got something that I wouldn't say maintenance.
Just describe my shower.
I wouldn't say maintenance free, but I would say that's the lowest maintenance you can ever get. right there.
Man, I tell you what, and you're right, because, I've got the slab porcelain, more of a countertop material, but it's the same thing.
Yep.
And I've got the side panels, my ceiling piece is in there too. I tell you what, that was a dance that you were there for, William.
I'll gladly not be there when putting 12 millimeter porcelain on a ceiling, 1/2-inch porcelain on a ceiling.
Yeah, that was not fun.
Yeah,
that was pushing my, and I had two professionals there that were helping, and it was their project, and I was helping them, to be honest. And that was all. I mean, when you're trying to get the back panel in, and I have to take the light bulbs out of the light bar just to be able to swing it around and get it in over our heads, it's not a good day.
Yeah. So, I mean, big tiles, they can present some really interesting challenges. But I think some of the benefits that they provide are going to be really fun to see what guys do with them in the future.
Yeah. Like in my house, we actually created the template, and we actually did a walk in the door, up the stairs, round the corner, around the other corner to see if we could actually get that in the room.
A practice run with just the template.
Just a template, because I wasn't sure if we were going to get that in the bathroom or not. It was close.
And that's taking the bathroom door off, taking the bedroom door off, right?
Off. Oh yeah, it was stripped down. I mean, it was like, okay, I might have to take drywall out because I'll patch drywall if I got to get this in there.
Yeah. So there are some interesting challenges to it, but it'll be fun to see where tile goes. Yeah.
Hey, one thing before we go, I don't know if you caught the episode with our friend Amber. She was challenging you to get down to Colorado Springs and teach her how to do a shower in her other bathroom.
That's right. She has one more bathroom to finish up, and I did. I made Amber a promise that I would teach her how to tile her own bathroom so that she could show up that very shoddy contractor who came into her house and did some bad work, and then everything ensued from there. But yeah, so that's...
You mean that convicted felon contractor that went in there that I could say that?
That guy. Yeah. That whole project really, it hit home with me because I thought about my mom and my sister. And if somebody did that to them, like I'd be incredibly upset. I mean, that's where my defensiveness kicks in. And all I wanted to do with Amber was just, inviting someone to work in your house is the most intimate space. And he took advantage of that. And I felt strongly, and I'm glad that my company, Ardex Americas, backed us, provided all the materials, and we were actually able to go in there and fix her shower and put things back together. In fact, my buddy Jason McDaniels is actually in Memphis, Tennessee, doing another bathroom rescue where some contractors did some shoddy work, and he's actually fixing another bathroom right now as we speak.
Man, here we go again, right? But we'll close with this. The problem is there are some absolutely stunning people out there doing beautiful bathrooms. And there's that small percentage out there that gives such a bad name to all the skilled professionals out there doing it.
Yeah, I would say if you're ever hiring a tile contractor, ask for references. And the thing is that looking at photos may not always tell the entire story, but when you talk to somebody who's actually had that contractor in their house, it tells much more of a story. And I always when I was a tile contractor, I viewed my customers as friends. When I left that project, I was friends with nearly every single one of them. And that's just the kind of relationship that I like to develop with my customers. So, ask for references. I think that's the best thing that you can do.
And if they've got a CTI number, right? That doesn't hurt.
CTI, also check with the contractors board. If you have one in your jurisdiction, check with the contractors board, see what their standing is like with the construction bureau. There's lots of things that you can do. Absolutely.
And listen to the hour 1 episode of the show that just aired before this, as we talk about how to hire a contractor. If you missed that hour, there we go.
There you go. Absolutely.
All right. William White, my friend, Ardex Americas, thanks for coming on today, man, and giving me a load of information for all of our listeners out there that have been tuning in today. Thanks for coming on again, brother.
Always a good time with you, my friend.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, brother. And all the information for him will be in the show notes on the podcast here, or you can catch it over at aroundthehouseonline.com. All right. I'm Eric G. And for William White, you've been listening to Around the House.
Life is a love song, let's be lovers. We're all over the radio. Take my hand, I know where to go. All over the radio with you.
Hey, it's Eric G from Around the House. Are you planning a decking or siding project this year? If you are, you've got to check out my friends at Millboard. Millboard is a completely different kind of composite decking and cladding that enhances outdoor spaces with enduring distinction. Hand-molded from the finest oak, it realistically mimics the natural grain and color of premium hardwood. If you're looking for something that doesn't look like plastic and instead real wood, check out millboard.com. Make sure and check out that interview we did just a few weeks back. That's millboard.com.